Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the witch's wheel of the year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. All right, my friends, we have Beltane season, super full blood flower moon in Scorpio. Bam, bam, bam. It's pretty epic. It is Lunar week 15. Let's get into it. Okay, first and foremost, if you're like, Beltane, what the heck is that? That is the Sabbat / Sabbat season that we are currently in. We being pagans, heathens, witches, polytheists, magicians of various sorts and types. Beltane is the holiday that comes in the second half of the season of spring, and it is really based a lot in fertility, virility, all of that good stuff. If you want to know more about Beltane, go check out my free class on YouTube. Folks that are subscribed to my Patreon at the $9 and higher level, that's the Venus level and higher, get access to the 20-page, something like that, workbook that goes along with the class with astrological references, an 8-week calendar, a lot of the holy days that are in that calendar we talk about in this podcast, rituals, prayers, altar building recommendations, all that good stuff, and so much more. Go check that out. But yeah, here we are in Beltane season, and we are wrapping up our time in Taurus. This is really our last few days of traveling through Taurus, and we are going to move into Gemini, which is the sign that oversees the last 4 weeks of Beltane and the last 4 weeks of spring. We'll get into that a little bit more later in the podcast. What else? If you want to know more, sign up to my site. There's a newsletter that I send out irregularly. Check in with me for a tarot reading or an astrology reading if you want to find out what this stuff means in your personal life, how you might work with all of this cool information. And also, if you want to support this podcast and all of the work that I do, join my Patreon. Thank you so much to my patrons. You can leave a review also on your podcast service, wherever you listen to this. And if you are feeling especially heretical, you can give it a thumbs up or a 5-star rating, all the good stuff. There's links for everything in the description as usual. Let's get into it. Okay, so our Beltane season witches work. I know I say this every week, but I like to ground us in the beginning of this audio ritual as I have begun to conceptualize it. I like to ground us in the work that we're doing for the season and then move into the granular stuff. So Beltane season witches work centers on fertility, virility, fecundity, and action. And those are words, as we have talked about in the last few weeks and in the class, those are words that can be loaded with lots of gender baggage, but they absolutely do not need to be. These are energies that we see manifested in myriad forms in the natural world. And if we are paying attention, we will see them manifested in myriad forms in our species, humans, as well. These are energies that all humans have access to, and all of us will express in some iteration or another. The global themes, as we look around at the holy days, the holidays, the festivals, the celebrations that other religions and belief systems are practicing past and present, we see very similar stuff. Surging power, fertility, and exchanging energy with opposing systems, aka sex and death. In this week in particular, we're going to see a shift in a little bit of that. more into the less sexy, more magic. Less of the knocking of sacred boots, as we like to say here on the podcast, the humpery, the hashtag healthy, lusty, thrusty of it all that we get here in Beltane, because let's be real, a lot of our Beltane symbolism is just straight up schmirkin, right? And God's bless, right? We love. But and also, as we move into Gemini season, it becomes a little more abstract, a little more plural, a little more diversified and multitudinous and magical. We begin to see more and more of an emphasis on the Hyros in the Hyros Gamos, the sacred marriage. Beltane first part during Taurus season, a lot of focus on the marriage. Now we're going to start focusing more on the sacred. Um, and as I record this, I am sending peace and love and power to all of the people of the world fleeing or resisting their warring governments, as well as sending peace and love and power to all of the people of America dealing with the incredible number of mass shootings that we have experienced over this weekend with our very spicy moon in Scorpio eclipse and all of that stuff. Okay, let's get into what are we doing with this moon? Okay, May 15th, Sunday, we have our super full blood flower moon in Scorpio at 25 degrees. It will be exact at 9:14 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Obviously later in the night / the next day for everybody else around the planet. That's a lot of words. What does all this stuff mean? Okay, first off, I'm going to assume that you all are fairly familiar with what a full moon is. So let's jump to the super part. A super moon is a moon that appears to be a few percentage points brighter and larger than a traditional full moon. Why? Because the moon in its orbit around Earth comes a little closer during part of the year and is a little further away at another part of the year. And when we have a full moon that coincides with that point in the orbit where it is the closest to the Earth, it looks larger in the sky, just by a few percentage points. It's not massive, but it is the super moon. When we have a moon, a full moon or a new moon, that is at the furthest point, that's a micro moon. When the super moon happens on a new moon, you can't see it, so nobody really cares. When we have the micro on a full moon, it makes the full moon look slightly smaller, but you don't really necessarily notice it, so nobody really cares. But everybody cares about a super full moon because it does look a bit larger than usual. Okay. So going on to some of these other words, blood flower moon, what is that? Okay. Why is it a blood moon? Well, because we are also having an eclipse with this full moon. And so when it rises on the horizon for you, wherever you are in the world or in the country, it will look red or reddish on the horizon. And this is because of a bunch of stuff in theory, but ultimately it's light bending and refracting, and certain rays being able to get to the moon and back faster and slower and all of that stuff. So the moon is not actually turning red, but it is potential that our ancestors were pretty bugged out by this sight. um, and this is also in part because of the eclipse. As the sun moves across, as the Earth's shadow moves across the moon, it is going to block it out ultimately. And some of that process also can make the moon appear to turn red, orangey red, brownish red, or really pretty strongly red. It's a really cool sight. If the skies are clear where you live, I recommend watching the moonrise tonight, and or at the very least getting out to watch a bit of the eclipse. Now, / flower moon, before we get into the eclipse stuff. Flower moon is one of our moon names for full moons during the month of May. We have flower moon, pink moon, even though pink moon was last month too, pink moon also for this month, sturgeon moon, and a few others really beautiful. Okay, now, um, do we do magic on eclipses or not? The jury is out. So, first and foremost, as I said last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, when we had a solar eclipse on the new moon, um, buyer beware, your mileage may vary, / you have free will. Though, last eclipse on that new moon was a moon that I did say, I don't actually really encourage doing any magic, cleansing, prayer, just taking the day off, um, was a little bit more in alignment with the rest of the astrology that was happening. So, what about this moon? Well, a lot of various astrologers and witches have really been excited about this particular full moon, really excited about this particular eclipse. A lot of folks are like, this is the very best moon of the year to do magic with. I don't know, maybe. Personally, I think that has a little bit to do with the hype around Scorpio. Like, oh, Scorpio, it's so spooky. All right, we get it. Take the jacket off. We know we're impressed with your leather jacket. It's super great. Let's move on. But sorry, Scorpios out there for who've just turned off the podcast. Like, I'll never listen again. But a full moon in Scorpio can bring us a lot of heavy energy. And so an eclipse in Scorpio is going to bring us heavier energy. Now, heavy doesn't mean bad, it means heavy, right? So another word we might use here is intense. Scorpio full moons feel intense. Scorpio eclipses also feel intense. That can be intensely erotic, intensely scary, right? Intensely frustrating, intensely exciting, but it tends to ramp up the intensity. So, again, do we do magic on this moon or not? Well, again, I'm going to say your mileage may vary. Listen to your free will. If this feels like a moon that is right for you to do magic on, go for it. If this feels like a moon that's like weird and funky, chill out. No big deal. We're going to have another full moon next month and one after that and one after that. So you're going to have plenty of chances to do full moon magic throughout the year. What kind of magic might we do with a full moon in Scorpio? Well, Scorpio is the sign that really addresses sex, death, regeneration. This full moon is sextile to Pluto, the planet of investigation, regeneration, death and rebirth, sex, death, all that stuff. But as it's kind of playing out in America, because we kind of have to have that in the back of our minds, America going through its Pluto return, anytime we have something happening up in the sky that is like poking at Pluto, it is bringing in all of that other baggage. And even if you're not in America, what happens in our country does have an effect around the planet because we have military bases everywhere. So if we get fussy about something, everybody's going to be fussy about it. And I don't mean that in a good way. I'm laughing, but I'm I'm laughing so that I don't start crying. So this full moon in and of itself can be a very erotic moon, super duper sexy. It can be a super kinky moon. Yummy. We love that. It could be an incredibly regenerative and healing full moon. It could be a full moon that assists you in a deep plunge into you or another topic that is close to your heart, because Pluto and Scorpio absolutely assist with deep and profound investigation of things and situations. And so, all of that stuff. For me, when we have an eclipse, we get two different pieces that come through. One, there's a blocking of a light, right? So a light or a celestial guide or a deity or a resource that we normally would have access to is blocked out. We're cut off temporarily from it. And that can feel destabilizing. That can stir our paranoia. And we may act from that place of defensiveness and freaking out. Conversely, when that resource or light or guide or voice is blocked out, there's all this other stuff that we can see that we normally can't see. And again, sometimes that's really enlightening and sometimes that's destabilizing. Sometimes that's the same thing. So during eclipses, I think about what am I going to have access to that I normally wouldn't have access to? / what might have access to me during this time period that normally wouldn't have access to me because this other larger thing would usually be in the way. That stuff, right? That's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about with this moon and Scorpio and the eclipse and all of that. Again, this is a really great moon to just be out in nature, witness the shift of the season, clean and reset your altar if you feel like doing something like that, dedicate a tool to a job, making babies of all kinds, human babies, as well as, any other project that you wanted to kick off could be great. But also, given the national conversation that we are having right now around making babies and not making babies, this eclipse could also be really profound in bringing in some magical work to our political goals around that stuff, and being more intense around our right to bodily autonomy, our right to abortions, our right to physical safety and not being subjected to violence daily. And right, we got a lot of stuff going on here in America. So this might also be an eclipse where we are emptying out and letting go of a lot of that funky stuff that Pluto and Scorpio can represent in our world. Violence, abuse, plutocratic power structures, etc., etc. Okay. When we're dealing with the full moon, it's a fruit. So there is something ripening. There is something coming to fruition now. In my opinion, it is the results of inaction on the part of our government on a lot of really important stuff. I think the fruits of those behaviors are coming to bear at this time, not necessarily really to anybody's benefit. Yeah. Okay. With our lunar body work, with the moon in Scorpio, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, preparing for action, the organs and the processes of pleasure, reproduction, and waste management, aka sex and death. And as I say every week, not a doctor of the physical body, a doctor of the cosmos. Don't listen to me for medical advice. I don't know what I'm talking about. Just some lady yelling on the internet. Please get with your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to integrate any of the lunar body work into your healthcare routines. For our plant body work, while the moon is hanging out in Scorpio, we are planting, transplanting, or grafting annual flowers and fruits and veg that are going to bear crops above ground, like watermelon, zucchini, corn, tomatoes, beans, all of that good stuff, etc., etc. Okay. What are our holy days for this day? Shall we get into it? I think we should. Okie dokie, from our German friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Cold Sophie. This is a continuation of other ice saints festivals that we see past and present in Europe. Sophie is not specifically a saint, but it is very much in the spirit of those other holidays and festivals. Basically, this is an acknowledgement of that last burst of cold that we get at some point in spring in the northern hemisphere, before the summertime really kicks in. So it's sort of a last acknowledgement of those icy, frosty, death, and underworld ancestors and entities and deities that we are working with all through winter season that we say goodbye to at spring as we move through the overground journey of the solar half of the year. And so this is sort of an acknowledgement of that tradition as well. From our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Isidro. Isidore the farmer laborer, also known as Isidore the Farmer, was a Spanish farm worker known for his piety toward the poor and animals. Patron saint of farmers, the Spanish profession name labrador comes from the verb labrar, to till or to plow, or in a broader sense, to work the land. And of course, that is certainly a major theme here at Beltane season as we wake up the land and begin planting things to sprout, right? Through our growth season that we're going to have here in the Northern Hemisphere. Also on this day, from our Buddhist friends and ancestors in China and a bunch of other places in the Asian world, we have Vesak, or the birth of Buddha. We've had several births of Buddha, starting in, I think we had a couple in April. Or excuse me, I think we had a couple in March. We definitely had a few in April. We're going to have more here in May. I think we may have some in June as well. But all through this portion of the year, aka spring, various nations and cultures within the massive world that is Asia are celebrating the birth and the enlightenment of Buddha. I believe this might be the day that's recognized by the UN as well. Okay. From our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Orisha Oka. The Orisha Oko, the god of agriculture, is represented by an ox-drawn plow, connecting us to Taurus symbolism, with a parasol in its rear section to protect the farmer. Don't we love that? There's more to it, but that's all we're going to talk about with with this particular Orisha. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Mercurialia, and we also have Maya and Mercury Day. So for Mercurialia specifically, and this would be the 15th day of May, aka the 15th day of the lunar month, coinciding with what we think of as May, which is here, the full moon. Merchants would sprinkle their heads, their ships, and their merchandise and their businesses with water taken from the well at Porta Capena. I tried to do a little bit of research around this well and figure out why it was that this one was so important. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm sure that information is out there. But here is a really overt festival connecting Mercury to merchants and sailing and sea folk, people who were working waterways as well as the waterways itself, but also commerce and all of that stuff, all falling under the auspices of Mercury / Hermes / the sign of Gemini, which we are about to enter. Maya and Mercury Day were also from our Roman friends and ancestors. Maya was one of the Pleiades and is the mother of Mercury or Hermes. And so this was a day dedicated to the two of them. All right, let's move on to May 16th. Alrighty, May 16th, Monday. The moon enters Sagittarius. And I personally think that the Vibatrons from this mega moon in Scorpio are going to kind of wash out at least the first few hours, if not even maybe the first day of the moon being in Sagittarius. It's going to be like, yeah, it's kind of in Sagittarius, but it's still spooky. So what you may find is all of that stuff that gets brought up for you or that you decide to wrangle with during the moon hanging out in Scorpio may start to take on a bit of a philosophical bend. You may start to feel a little more philosophical about the stuff that you're thinking about versus it being very like cut and dried or very like, it's either in the flesh or I don't want to hear about, like the Sagittarius may be like, oh wait, I can distance myself from this a little bit. I can think about it in the abstract a little bit. What do I think about this from a philosophical bend? That sort of stuff. But also, as the moon moves into Sagittarius, you may be invited or you may find yourself in conversations with people who hold radically opposing viewpoints from you, who are like fully on the opposite side of the spectrum from where you are at in a political view or a philosophical view. And talk with those people, converse, exchange ideas, try not to get into an argument, try not to get into a debate. Mostly just because on this particular day, it won't necessarily be super effective. But listen to them. Listen to them. You don't have to agree with them at all, but listen to them. And then later, when you are alone, think about the stuff that this person said that you totally disagree with, and try to think about how it is that a person arrives at seeing the world that way. Again, we're not necessarily trying to find common ground with this person. We're not trying to, find a way to like bridge or any of that stuff necessarily. But we might be working on a little tiny, tiny bit of empathy for these people, / just a deeper philosophical understanding of ideology, how it works, and how people have arrived in their lives at the beliefs that they hold so dearly. Like, how did this person end up here? That thing. Not that we need to go down that same road, but it might behoove us later on to understand why it is that a person thinks the way that they do and how they have arrived at the viewpoint and the worldview that they have. Okay. While the moon is hanging out in Sagittarius for our lunar body, our moon is now waning. The full moon has officially passed. So our moon is going to be getting smaller and smaller for the next 2 weeks. So we, in turn, for our lunar body work, are going to be resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the lower back, the sciatic nerve family, and the thighs. Again, doing what is safe and right for you and your healthcare regimen, and not just going off. And as I always say, like, if the physical work doesn't work for you, does the metaphor work for you? So do you feel like you're carrying something on your back that you need to get off your back? Are are your nerves shot, right? Does somebody have the nerve to come and talk with you about something and disturb you? Are you enjoying the thickness and the lusciousness of your thighs, whether that be physically or esoterically? That stuff, right? We can always work with the metaphor. We do not have to always work with it just in the physical body. But it's, I think, interesting to think about the work we're doing in the physical world, the work we're doing in the magical world, the work that is suggested in the body, all of that, seeing those layers. To me, it's really interesting. Okay. With this waning moon in Sagittarius, for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we're doing pest controls, disease control, plowing, weeding, aerating the soil, and pruning our plants to encourage below ground growth. So if you have transplanted something recently, and this would be a time to do whatever you need to do to that plant to encourage the roots to really dig into the soil and establish itself in that new transplanted situation. Okay. We have no astrology of note for this day. So let's just move directly into the holy days for May 16th, which we have only 2. One, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Algol. Now, this is a star that is in Medusa's head, and it is carried in the left hand of Perseus. The name of Algol comes from an Arabic word meaning the head of the ogre. The English translation became demon star, with other names being Satan's head or the specter's head. However, in Chinese, it belongs to a group of stars called the mausoleum. Now, we talked about another star that is featured in, it's considered to be in the constellation of Perseus, but it's kind of the constellation of Medusa too, right? Just like this archetype is here, this goddess is here. And again, if you don't remember, or if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, one of the things that I really pointed out was the power of Medusa and the way that Medusa's image has changed over time. Because Medusa and other Gorgons, first off, as I mentioned last time, look very similar to a lot of the depictions of Kali. I think that that's very interesting and a very potent connection, especially here on our Scorpio moon. Our Scorpio new moon every year is the Kali Durga. So it is, or excuse me, the Kali Yuga. No, it's not Kali Durga, and it's also not Kali Yuga. It's, it's the Kali Jayanti. It's the festival for Kali, but it's a part of a larger festival celebrating a lot of the goddesses in fall. And this star connects us again to this character of Medusa. And like I said, in the early days, Medusa and other Gorgons were depicted as uh, basically non gendered beings. They were very androgynous. And then over time, Medusa became a woman. Why is that important? Well, a lot of folks, as we talked about last week, a lot of folks point to just that, that's the patriarchy slowly encroaching on matrilineal societies and goddess worshiping societies and slowly turning every woman and every goddess into the bad guy. Yes. But, and also, Perseus, to be a hero, must have a monster to best. And that is also an extremely important element in patriarchy, in the kyriarchy, and certainly the things that we are happening in this world today. For this young man, Perseus, to be a hero, there had to be a monster out there in the world for him to go kill. And so, conveniently, society provides him with Medusa, a victim of abuse. So, lots of spicy stuff when we're dealing with the stars that are in Perseus, aka Medusa. Lots of stuff. Side note to all of that, I think it's very interesting that for the Chinese, this belongs to a group of stars called the Mausoleum because we have a lot of ancestor death work at this time of year throughout the month of May. We have these festivals dedicated to the Lares and the Manes and these other Roman ancestral holidays that are basically intended to soothe the minds and the spirits of the restless dead that are like roaming around, haunting us from the past. Gosh, I wonder what it was. Could it be, I don't know, betrayal or like totally having your entire reputation, turned into something for some Chad to like prove himself on? I don't know. I don't know why they're so restless. Weird. Okay. That's our holy days for May 16th. Shall we move on? Yeah, we probably should. All right. May 17th is a Tuesday, and our waning moon is still hanging out in Sagittarius. So we are still buttering up our thighs and pruning our plants and all of that good stuff. Okay. In astrology, we have Mars conjunct Neptune in Pisces at 25 degrees today. As we talked about before, Mars is not like extremely excited to be hanging out in Pisces. It wants it to be steamy. Mostly it's swampy. Neptune is very thrilled to be hanging out in Pisces. This is Neptune's home sign. And so in this conjunction, Mars is making the conjunction. Mars is the faster moving planet. So Mars is coming up to Neptune to hang out for a moment before it continues on. But Neptune is going to have a little bit more influence here. So what I would say about this conjunction is just be careful, slow down a little bit. We also have the sun squaring Saturn this week, and so there already is a sense of like slowing down and a little bit of funkiness with that. But this is a day where I would say, give yourself a little opportunity to daydream, give yourself a little opportunity to like float around and be a little goofy about things. Try not to rush too much from place to place. If you find yourself getting super impatient, you can always put yourself in timeout, as we love to say on the podcast. But generally speaking, Mars conjunct Neptune, I feel, can be a little bit frustrating if you're in a mood to go, go, go. If you are in a mood to like float around and just kind of, deal with whatever happens to come up and just kind of hang out in the moment. I think Mars conjunct Neptune can be a really cute day of like going after your dreams and thinking about like what dreamy things would you like to fire up your passions for and all of that stuff. Could be a really sexy day. Could be a fun day for combining those types of erotic energies from Mars, plus the very transcendent energies that Neptune can bring in. Yeah, could just be a day where you're like, I want to daydream and also I need to hurry up. So, sit with yourself, just hang out. It's all good. Okay. Our holy days for this day, we only have two. From our global friends and ancestors, we have Day Against Homo, Trans, and Biphobia. This coordinates events that raise awareness of LGBT rights violations and stimulate interest in LGBT rights work worldwide. Last year, the commemorations took place in over 130 countries across the globe, and this date was chosen to commemorate the decision to remove homosexuality from the International Classification of Diseases of the World Health Organization in 1990. What the fuck? Like, come on, you guys. What is wrong with you? It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. Okay. From our Moroccan friends and ancestors, we have Mutten Learden. This is believed to be the first day of summer in Morocco, and the word Mutten Learden means death of the earth or death to earth, which kind of sounds a little heavy on the surface, right? Various rituals performed on this day by different tribes are designed to ward off evil and danger. For example, it is believed that rising at dawn and taking a bath will strengthen the body. And there is a taboo against sleeping, which is believed to result in a loss of courage. A special dish made from barley, fresh milk or buttermilk, and the root of a plant called bezifour is prepared and eaten on this day in the belief that it will make the people strong and ward off evil. In some areas, it is believed that a husband's affections will waver on this day. And so we have a lot of Beltane stuff in this, right? First off, we have the death of Earth, aka sort of the opening up or the cleaving of Earth, right? The turning over of Earth, and this various rituals performed to ward off evil and danger. Well, we have that dialed in with the Scorpio moon, that this is a great moon for doing protection work and all that stuff. More so even as we get further into the week with our Capricorn moon. But this idea that husbands' affections will waver on this day. Now, Beltane in and of itself is this sacred marriage moment, but the month of May, as we've talked about in the last few weeks, carries this ominousness for committed partnerships. And here is one of those really important distinctions. The partnerships or the marriages that are formed on Beltane and in sort of the heart of the season of Beltane are meant to be one night stands, basically. They are for the moment. They are for the erotic pleasure. They are for the spark of desire, waking the body back up after the death of winter, etc., etc. They are not necessarily meant to be commitments. And I think that's a really interesting distinction. And we see that reiterated in these various holidays around the world, past and present. As we move into June and we get closer and closer to the summer solstice, then all of a sudden we will see these holidays switch back into sacred marriage time, bonding time, commitment time, partnership time, all of that stuff. But right now, there's almost this moment of like, no, there's still work to do before we really get into that high part of the season and commit to whoever it is that we're going to be with. I don't think that this necessarily means that, like, if you hooked up with someone on Beltane, magically you can't be with that person. But I think it also implies, like, don't rush into things. Give it a month. Give it 6 weeks. Wait, hang out, see how things play out. Things might be exciting May 1st. Let's see how they're doing June 12th. That thing. I love that. I love that from the ancient world. It's so good. Okay. Let's move on to May 18th. May 18th is a Wednesday, and our waning moon enters Capricorn. Okay, so I'm going to get into the astrology of this on May 19th because that's when we actually hit the disseminating moon. We're still kind of under the auspices of the full moon, even here with our waning moon in Capricorn. But for our lunar body work, we can start talking about that. We are relaxing, resting, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring our bones, our hair, our teeth, our nails. Yes, the mani-pedi is a holy act. Yes, the super deep moisturizer treatment that you want to do on your hair is a holy act. You heard it here first. Probably not, but you know. Hey. Um, so, and again, you know, if we don't want to work with the body physically, can we work with the metaphor? So, do you need to get in and repair the bones of something, right? Um, are you in a hairy situation that needs to be addressed? All right, I'll stop. But does your application to that job need teeth? All right. But you get what I'm saying. Okay. For our plant body work, we are maintaining or breaking down old containers, old borders, old fences, old gardening beds, old structures. Again, you know, if you are only living in an apartment and you've just got your plants inside, do you have a pot that's breaking that needs to be replaced? Do you have a plant stand that's starting to fall apart that needs to be replaced? This is the time to tear that thing apart. It might be that you end up with a pile of resources that can be used to build something later. But Capricorn really speaks to the structures of things. And so this is a time to look at the various structures, trellises, gardening beds, fences, all that stuff in your outdoor world, if you're lucky enough to have outdoor space, or your plants, maybe they're on your windowsill or whatever, and just check the structures and see if something needs maintenance or if it needs to be taken down, taken apart, destroyed to make room for something new to grow later on. Okay. Again, no astrology of note on this day. So let us move directly onto the holy days, shall we? Yes. Okay. All right. We have a pile of holy days here on May 18th, starting off with from our Jewish slash Kabbalistic friends and ancestors, running from May 18th to May 19th, we have Lag BaOmer. This is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, which occurs on the 18th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar. And again, when we're talking about that 18th day of the month, we mean the lunar month. That's part of why we are doing this whole podcast based on our lunar weeks, because so many civilizations, past and present, count their time through the patterns of the moon, also syncing up with the sun from time to time. Just keep it spicy. According to Kabbalistic tradition, this day marks the celebration, interpreted by some as the anniversary of the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi, a messianic sage and leading disciple of Rabbi Akiva in the 2nd century, and the day on which he revealed the deepest secrets of the Kabbalah in the form of the Zohar, which is the Book of Splendor, which literally means radiance. This is a landmark text of Jewish mysticism and is pretty much found on the shelf of every Kabbalistic magician out there. This association has spawned several well-known customs and practices on Lag BaOmer, including the lighting of bonfires, pilgrimages to the tomb of Bar Yochai in the northern Israel town of Meron, and various customs at the tomb itself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we have the death of this rabbi, but possibly even more importantly, I don't necessarily think I have the authority to say if it's more important, but also um, we have the revelation of this incredibly magical book that is the basis for a really, really spicy and potent and popular magical tradition that is still practiced today. Okay. From our Vodun friends and ancestors, we have the feeding of Grande Alumandia. This is a day of great reverence for Grandmother Alumandia, also referenced as Saint Soleil, Haiti, and Great Saint Anne. Um, this does correlate to Grandmother Anne, aka the Mother of Mary, Jesus's grandmother. Feeding Grandmother Alumandia is another way Haitians are able to demonstrate respect and honor for their ancestors by making delicious traditional foods and celebrating with their family and community. So here we have yet again another festival in the heart of all of this life and sex and fertility and virility imagery in Beltane, another holiday dedicated to death and to ancestors. Also, on this day, from our pagan friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Pan. This is another holiday that we get showing up in the last 20 years or so in our Wheel of the Year calendars that have been invented and worked on in various places on the internet. So, this is a static day here in the midst of May, the midst of horny season, the midst of, hashtag knocking of sacred boots for Pan, the randiest of the goats. We love Pan. Also, on this day, from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of the Divine Twins. I have a huge piece on my site that can be found through the Wheel of the Year Beltane link in the menu on not just the Yoruba divine twins, but all of the places where we see divine twins showing up in various myths and belief systems and philosophical practices around the planet. Ibeje, I believe, are their name for the Yoruba twins, and they carry a ton of elements in their myth that we also find in the sacred twins of the Maya, the sacred twins of Norse people, and on and on and on. It's pretty incredible. It also is kicking off, wait for it, oh, that's right, Gemini season, the sign of, what was it again? Oh, yeah, the twins. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. Um, if you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. May 19th is a Thursday, and here is where we find our disseminating moon in Capricorn at 2:41 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the night / the next day for everybody else around the planet. This is at 13 degrees of Capricorn. This disseminating moon in Capricorn brings up some tough work for us. So let's just get that out of the way. It's Capricorn, right? So Oftentimes it's not necessarily going to be, a frolic in the park. But what is it that we are being encouraged to look at and wrangle with under this moon? Well, Raven Caldera, in their book Moon Phase Astrology, which we talk about a lot on the podcast, love it, great book, um, suggests that this moon is about sitting with yourself and asking yourself slash examining slash doing hard work to provide and protect your people. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, right? Is there something tough that needs to be done that's going to make life easier and safer for your people? Okay, fairly straightforward. However, of course, we can't just leave it alone at that. The deeper question is, who are your people? Who deserve that work from you? And how do you make that determination, right? What potentially funky stuff goes into you saying to yourself, I don't have to include this person. That person is going to be too much of a tap on my resources. It's funky stuff, right? I think that this work can be really hard, but necessary when we are thinking about individuals in our lives that are draining us and not supporting us and tapping our resources. Because I'm your leftist witch, I'm also going to say that this is a great time to think about those resources in your life and how these larger systems are tapping them and how they don't deserve your energy and your time and your money and all that other stuff. So that thing, right? How is it that you have come to decide that you need that magazine subscription or whatever it is? But also on this moon, we are taking time to think about who we associate with, right? So, an extension of that conversation of who are my people, who are the people that I align myself with, who are the groups, who are my friend groups that I align myself with, and how do they look on me? How do they make me look? When I think about this, what I think about is a person who maybe considers themselves to be a Christian, right? And they have that spirituality, they have that practice, maybe they were raised in it even, who knows? And yet, while they have their own personal experiences and interpretation of what that word might mean and their own relationship with that God and all of that stuff, they also are looking around at, the really small portion of Christians who are fanatical, who get, all the TV time, right? People like, we don't have to say it, but anyways, they don't deserve their names being said, but groups out there that are really making it tough to be a Christian, right? Um, that's the thing I think about, right? And that situation can happen to any of us. We don't have to be Christians or atheists or whatever. We can be, people that are aligned with a group, and then we're looking at the group and being like, man, I don't know if I want to be aligned with you guys. Like, I tell people I'm Christian and they go, ugh, because of this small group who can't act right, who are just making it terrible for everybody, Christians and everybody else for that matter. So who do you align with and how does that look on you? Again, Capricorn moons often bring us kind of funky work. So also, this is a great moon for doing any kind of protection work. And because it is a waning moon, focusing on eradicating problems, pushing things out, blocking, ending, that kind of protection work where you're like, you can't come in. I'm not building a wall, I'm reducing entrance. um, that kind of inner dialogue for yourself. And also any work that is uncomfortable but makes people and environments safer. And that is also a real fine line to walk right now in our country as a just a real conversation to have with ourselves. You know, that whole like when you're sacrificing your liberty for safety, you lose both, or whatever. All that, those types of catchphrases are lovely, but ultimately it comes down to a lot of rhetoric when you're when you don't want to be shot at a nightclub, right? And so what it makes me think about is like after the Pulse uh, terrorist shooting that happened, that hate crime that happened in Florida, the Pulse nightclub a few years ago, how one of my favorite dance clubs here in Seattle almost overnight had this radically new fancy tech system for security, and they had cameras and they were scanning everybody's IDs, and I was like, whoa, man. And my immediate feeling was like, my God, this is like a really invasive moment here. And then the more I started to think about it, I was like, this place has always had security cameras. And if I'm paying with my debit card at the bar, there's a trace that I was here. I'm not giving them really any more information than I already was. The new form of it freaks me out a little bit. And I would rather that we don't have to have this at all. But in this moment, this switch does make us some level safer in theory. Putting on a mask and wearing it at the store, even though the mask mandates have ended. Uncomfortable decisions that make my people and my environment safer. That stuff. Um, that's what this Capricorn moon wants from us, is to kind of dig in on that and think about it. We have the sun in Taurus trine Pluto in Capricorn on the same day. So again, all of those America issues and all of those issues around the self are here. This moon is square Chiron, who is conjunct Venus on this day in Aries. And so that whole portion around friend groups and who am I aligned with and how does that look on me, that might feel really funky. There might be a lot of like hurt feelings around that stuff. You might be thinking about the wounds that you experienced in the world that brought you to this group of friends. You might be thinking about the wounds that you have experienced personally within this group of friends. It could come up in a lot of different ways. Of course, you can always take a time out. You can always breathe. You can always just paint your nails, uh, and do a nice, moisturizing mask on your hair and just call it good. That's also totally legit. But if you have the capacity to wrangle with this stuff, do so. Because we kind of have to at some point, no matter what. You know what I mean? Okay. Our holy day for this day, from our global friends and ancestors, is Agender Pride Day. To be agender means to not identify as any particular gender. Agender, also known as gender blank, gender free, genderless, gender void, non gendered, ungendered, or null gender. The agender identity falls under the non binary umbrella and sometimes the transgender umbrella. Let's move on to May 20th. May 20th, it's a Friday. Let us blaze a trail directly into this weekend. Okay. We are going to be doing it under the auspices of a waning moon entering Aquarius. And the work that this moon is encouraging for us is to seek hope. And if we are having a hard time doing that, starting with our community. And I think that this is a really beautiful balance to the work from the day before, the 2 days before, as the moon was moving through Capricorn and kind of making us question, why do I hang out with these people? And is this worth my time? And burp, burp, burp. Coming into this waning moon in Aquarius, it's like, yes, these are my people. And hopefully these are people that inspire hope in you, inspire you to think about the future and what good could still be coming down the pipe. Again, referring back to the Moon Phase Astrology by Raven Caldera, one of the questions that they ask in this moon is, can you turn to your community for hope? Do you know anyone that instills hope in you? And if you don't, what does that say about the choices that you're making, about the people that you're aligning with? Why wouldn't you want to have somebody around you that gives you hope for the future? That's a legitimate question. Like, why? You may have like a really good answer to that, or at least a really intense answer to that. But seek hope. Um, slash, I don't know if you looked outside lately, but it's kind of funky. And so this would just be like a nice muscle strengthening exercise. Like, let's exercise the hope muscle today. um, and again, seeking out our friends, our family members, our community members who can muster a positive image of the future for us and help us find that hope in ourselves and hope in our community. And moreover, really, it is about finding hope in each other. I was reading something from, I believe it was the NAP ministry on the internet that posted this the other day, but they were talking about how how self care is not a solo act, and it cannot be a solo act. It must include our community. Our self care is embedded in caring for each other and allowing other people to care for us. And I think that that sometimes can be the biggest reason why we don't allow people into our lives that will stir hope, that will stir faith, because that is allowing people to come into our lives and maybe do something that we're having a hard time doing for ourselves, which is having some hope, having some faith, right? No, I'm trying to stay alienated and freaked out. Do you mind? I'm trying to stay paranoid and defensive. Do you mind? And our hopeful friend is like, yes, I do mind. Here, stay with me in this moment right now. Let's talk about the cool shit that's happening and can happen and can still happen. Um, and I feel that engaging in mutual aid can be one of the deepest ways of reminding ourselves there is still a chance. There is still power in the people. There is still a later today. There is still a tomorrow. There's still hope. I have faith. There's still hope. Um, because it really helps us see where we are connected. And oftentimes that's in our needs and in our issues. We're super connected. We are not actually alienated from each other. We are, for the most part, all in the same boat here. So remembering to connect with your people. That's your homework for this weekend that kicks off on May 20th. For our lunar body, while the moon is hanging out in Aquarius, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the legs, especially the knees and the ankles. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, doing pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, and aerating the soil to support below ground growth. Now, what do we have going on in this day in astrology? Just a little old thing called the sun entering Gemini. Yes, terrible horn noises aside. Gemini sun can be a lovely time for lots of people. What happens for us? Well, the sun, again, our sense of self. And so our sense of self begins to move into really feeling a need to communicate with and learn from other people. We want to talk to people. We want to listen to people. We want to exchange ideas. And with the sun in Gemini, we might find ourselves moving from a much more mental or intellectual place. We might want to learn lots of stuff and take in as much information as possible. We might find ourselves being more inquisitive, um, more logic oriented in our approach to the world. Um, we might be, as I said before, a little bit more communicative with people, and willing to talk about our inner process, or willing to say what's on our mind a little bit more easily. Um, we might find ourselves to be a little more adaptable in situations, a little more flexible, uh, a little more inventive, and versatile. Now, it's not all sweetness and light. I don't know if any of you have ever known a Gemini, but the several hundred of them that live in their minds, most of them are nice, but occasionally there's a crackpot in there. And so if we are, you know, moving through Gemini season and we're having a bad time, if we're having a funky time, if we're having a day off, we might find ourselves feeling really or acting really superficial. Um, really spacey, where our intellectual thing has kind of just gone off the rails and just floated out into space. We might become overly abstract, overly intellectualizing. Um, our communicative and talkative and articulate energies may start to morph into being gossipy or being nosy, um, or just, loquacious, like it far too many words to get the point across. And our adaptableness and our flexibleness and our versatility may start to drift into the zone of being inconsistent or being really scattered or really feeling super high strung or fickle or impatient or flighty. So, altogether, Gemini brings a lightness to the situation in general. Gemini's ruling planet is Mercury. Mercury is currently in retrograde as the sun enters Gemini. So it might be a moment of examining our tendencies around all of this stuff, talking, listening, communicating, taking in information, considering ideas, being versatile versus being scattered. And it might be a moment of sort of reviewing how we want to engage that energy before we really begin to engage it. The sun is going to be in Gemini from May 20th to June 20th. And Mercury is retrograde from May 10th through June 3rd. So Mercury will station direct and move into Gemini. So move into Gemini, like the 10th of Gemini, I think. Or 10th of June. I might be wrong about that. But we will have the sun in Gemini and Mercury moving direct at the same time. That will happen. But yeah, that's what we pretty much have coming for us as the sun enters Gemini. Let's now take a look at the holy days of May 20th, of which there are several. All right, kicking off our many several holy days that we have for May 20th, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Alcyone. This is the brightest star in the Pleiades cluster, which is in the shoulder of the bull, Taurus constellation. The Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, are located in the shoulder of the bull. Just said that, sorry. The traditional name, Alcyone, comes from the mythical daughter of Atlas, Alcyone. She is the central one, or the hen, of the Pleiades sisters who were seduced, or who was seduced by Poseidon, god of the sea. We just had a festival to Poseidon, and we know that Mercury is doing lots of water stuff at this time as well. The image for this fixed star is often a little virgin or a lamp. It strengthens eyesight, it assembles spirits, and raises winds, and reveals secret and hidden things. Now, why I think that that's interesting, that last line there is for folks who do magic with fixed stars, is because, of course, we have the Les Coups panorama, um, which shows the Pleiades constellation accurately represented in its relative position in the sky over the bull's shoulder, Taurus. And, this panorama was painted around 17,000 years ago, and it was hidden in a cave until, 1990 or something like that. So I love that. But this all kind of speaks to Mercury stuff and Gemini stuff for me. Assembling spirits, Hermes Mercury is absolutely a magician. Raising winds, hello, air sign. All of that stuff. I don't know. It's cool shit. Okay. As we said already, the sun enters Gemini, the twins, on this day. Go and read that piece on my website on the divine twins, me, myself, and I. Also happening on this day from our Slavic friends and ancestors, from May 20th to May 30th, we have the festival of Grudi Rozno. During these 10 days, Volvas, who are magicians, soothsayers, sorceresses, etc., bring sacrifices to the god Rod for rain and for good productive harvests. But that's not all. During this festival, there is also a big worshiping of these magical folk in community, and dedication or rededication ceremonies for these magicians and soothsayers, sorceresses, witches, pagans, what have you, magic workers, for their magical tools. So they will take them out, they'll bless them, they'll cleanse them, and they'll rededicate them to the magical work that they do with that tool. Pretty potent stuff. From May 20th to May 21st, from our Vodun friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Simbi Blanc. The Simbi are a collection of Loa who are serpents of many colors. Today is a feast for the white Simbi. All are connected to water, healing, and magic. All can move between the worlds and are communicators between the gods and mortals. That's literally a description of Hermes slash Mercury. Pretty freaking cool. Okay. And I expect that the Greek influence, or the Greek is influenced by the Yoruba African tradition, not the other way around. Vodun, of course, being an extension of the Yoruba tradition as a diaspora religion itself. From our Norse friends and ancestors, we have Frigablot. Okay, so for all of our Norse folk, past and present, anytime we have the word blot, B-L-O-T, involved in a holiday, that is intended to infer blood. So yes, this may have been a type of blood sacrifice, but it is also a word that has come to be known as just a festival, a ritual moment. Like not just a hangout dinner, but like a fancy moment of magic and whatnot. So Frigga ended up being blurred with the goddess Freya, but they are separate goddesses. Frigga is a personification of the civilized world's atmosphere and clouds. She also oversees foresight and wisdom, and she dwells in the wetland halls of Fensalir. She's possibly also has something to do with love and fertility, but that usually comes under the auspices of the goddess Freya. Frigga is the principal wife of Odin and the mother of Tyr, Balder, and Hermod. She is depicted as either snow white or in super dark, basically black clothing. She has heron plumes in her headdress and she wears keys on her belt. And that key symbolism is absolutely something that we see with goddesses who practice magic and oversee magical practices. Her, connection to foresight and wisdom, the fact that she is connected to the sky with atmosphere and clouds and things like that, again, kind of puts her in the realm of dabbling in some of the stuff that we would attribute to Mercury or Hermes, but also kind of puts her in a realm like Saradwin and other goddesses that are more about magical practices than they are like being a mother goddess or a crone or what have you. So pretty cool stuff. Okay. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Bendidia. This is a festival of the Thracian goddess Bendis. Their shrine to her was built on the hill Munichia, which we talked about earlier in the month, near to the Temple of Artemis, with whom she is identified. She is often pictured as a huntress, which is another characteristic that she has with Artemis. And side note, interesting to have this goddess connected with Artemis, the hunter, Artemis, of course, being the archer, naturally connected to the sign of Sagittarius, which is the sign opposing Gemini. I might be reading too far into that, but that stands out for me. Moving on. Plato reported a bit about the first festival to Bendis at the beginning of the Republic. From his account, we learn that native Athenians took part and provided a procession as fine as that of the Thracians, and that a torch race was held, and on horseback, which was a novelty, horses connected to Gemini, and an all-night festival. From other sources, it's known that the Athenian procession began at the Prytaneum in the morning and wound down to the sanctuary in the Piraeus, while the Thracian procession was entirely within the Piraeus. Piraeus, excuse me. The 6-mile procession of the Athenians was so unusual that a decree called for basins, water, and sponges to bathe after it, and garlands of flowers. Then, presumably, a festival meal was provided, and after an interval and probably a nap after this long walk, the evening torch races and all night festival was held. And of course, these types of festivals also make really a lot of sense at this time of year because the days are growing longer and longer and longer, and it's warmer out, more and more all the way through the night. Um, uh, what function Bendis served is not described anywhere. But of course, she is somehow potentially connected to Athena or similar to her. Herodotus wrote that Thracian women offered wheat to her, and the Bendidia, the Bendidia, is held near the time of the Attic grain harvest. But Thrace bordered the route by which Athens imported grain from the Black Sea, another waterway, um, to feed its citizens, and there could be a connection there. Hard to say. And last but not least, on this day, see, I told you there's a lot of festivals for May 20th. From our Japanese friends and ancestors, we have Okinaga Tarashi Hime. Jingu is a legendary Japanese empress now venerated as a kami. She was a warrior queen with tremendous shamanic power, constantly in communication with the spirits. She was described as being divinely possessed. She may have been a consort for an emperor, but she never married, and her brother helped her rule. Again, Mercury, Gemini symbolism. Brothers and sisters, sibling relationships at the heart of Gemini symbolism. But again, shamanic power, spirit communication, very much within the realm of our Hermetic slash Hermes, right? That's where that word comes from. Our Hermetic symbolism that is coming forward more and more so at this time of year. All right, let's move on to May 21st. May 21st is a Saturday, and our waning moon is still hanging out in Aquarius. So we are still seeking hope amongst our friends and our communities. Go do it. Go find it. Okay. Uh, briefly, the astrology of this day. Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun in Gemini at 0 degrees. So again, really emphasizing all of that stuff that we just talked about with all of that Gemini energy, but also really emphasizing the RE of our retrogrades. In other words, can we any of this, reorganize, renegotiate, reconsider, reevaluate, reconnect, all of that stuff? This is a great day for it. It could feel like a day where all of that work presents itself and we're like, I don't know what to do about this. Because when Mercury is conjunct the sun, it can kind of lose itself in the intensity of the sun. The sun can sometimes be like, hey, shut up, I'm in charge. And Mercury is like, okay. And so it might be that it's just sort of a day of like, and then a day or two later, some stuff starts to make itself clear and obvious. It might be a day where things make themselves clear and obvious, but not in a way that you can act on them, just in a way that you can come into conscious realization of it. Do some journaling on this day. See what comes up for you. I think that could be really, really potent, especially at 0 degree of Gemini. We are just stepping into this sign with the sun and the planetary ruler of the sign. Really cool day. Okay, let's move on to the holy days of May 21st. We have a lot for this day too. And go figure, right? We have all of these holy days jammed up at the time when the sun is moving into the new sign. It makes sense. Okay, from our Slavic friends and ancestors, from May 21st to May 27th, we have Green Week. This is Uh, Similar but not the same to Grudi or Rosno, I have a feeling that these festivals probably overlay each other and are versions of each other, where one stresses one part of it and one stresses another part. And I wonder if there aren't some places in Eastern Europe where you see all of these things all mixed together. Okay. Green Week, also called Semik. Green Week, or the Green Holidays, is a traditional Slavic seasonal festival celebrated in late May and sometimes up to early June. And my guess is that it probably has something to do with lunar phases and maybe solar movements and maybe even fixed star risings. It is closely linked with the cult of the dead and spring agricultural rites. Starting to sound fairly familiar, isn't it? Seems like we've said that several times this week and the last few weeks. In Eastern Europe villages, the 7 weeks following Easter have historically been a time of festivity. Green Week takes place during the 7th week leading up to the Pentecost and includes the 7th Thursday after Easter, called Semik. On Semik, the Thursday of the Green Week, funeral rites are held for the unclean dead, aka those who have died before their time. Um, Birch trees are particularly significant because they are considered hosts for the souls of the deceased. Sometimes people honor a particular tree by decorating it or carrying it around. Other times, folks cut birch branches and hang them in their homes. The birch is also seen as a symbol of vegetative power, and it might be honored with people's hope that it will bring its vitality to the coming season's crops. I could also side just me, I also could see that as a symbol of regenerative resurrection type symbolism. Potentially, I might be wrong. Just saying. Springtime and fertility rituals are also important to the holiday. Girls bring offerings of fried eggs, a symbol of rebirth. We see lots of egg symbolism all throughout spring, and beer to birches and speak charms about improving the harvest when weaving garlands for the trees. Another tradition is for girls to pledge vows of friendship before the birch tree. Some believe this is a remnant of ritual sexual activity associated with the cult of spring, which certainly makes sense with everything else that we've seen. Like Kostroma during Maslenitsa, which we will talk about later in the year, a chosen birch tree is destroyed at the end of the festivities and it is usually drowned. How interesting is that? We know that bogs and wet earth and lakes are a huge sacred symbol and place for Eastern European Slavs and whatnot. So that's pretty potent, right? It is usually drowned in order to provide the needed rainfall for the sprouting crops. Now, with all of this water stuff, we bring in Rusalka. The Rusalka are nature spirits like Navki or Mavki, associated with Green Week traditions. They derive their name from Rusali, another name for the holiday. So, like in Romania, I believe this holiday is called Rusali. Some believe they were associated with deceased family members, or perhaps only the unclean dead. And I think unclean is an interesting word to use here. This is just what I found in my research. In fact, I think that this is from Wikipedia. Um, and so unclean, I think maybe could be a word that could be exchanged with unsettled or unresting. Like for whatever reason, this person is not at peace with their death. They're still wandering around on earth trying to get something done or trying to settle some energy or something. Sometimes an honored birch tree would be named for a Rusalka as part of Green Week. Some of the rites of Green Week, like making offerings of eggs and garlands, were thought to placate the Rusalki so that they would stay away from the village's agricultural fields for the season and not bring harm. The Rusalki are also associated with water and fertility, and so they might be invoked during Green Week in an attempt to bring their moisture and their vigor to the fields. During Green Week, Rusalki are believed to be more active, making them a greater threat to villagers if they are perceived as being threatening. One precaution villagers take during this week is to avoid swimming because Rusalki are thought to live in the water and could drown passerbys. So, interesting stuff. Okay. Moving on to our friends and ancestors in Bulgaria and Greece. From May 21st to the 23rd, we have a festival called Anastanaria or Nestinostarvo. In Bulgarian and Greek villages, people still perform an old fire walking festival ritual. This festival ritual, that's what my notes say. Okay. This originally pagan tradition is now associated with the feast day of Saint Constantine and Saint Helen. It is called the Nestinavarsto in Bulgaria and the Anastanaria in Greece. According to most ethnographers, the roots of the tradition can be traced all the way back to the ancient practices of the cults of Dionysus after the Christianization of Thrace, a historical region of Southeast Europe, now split between Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria. It was integrated into the new religion and became associated with St. Constantine and St. Helen, which gives us a lot more insight on why St. Helen might have a festival day at this time of year. In Bulgaria, the fire walking festival is called the Nestinavarsto. It is followed in several villages in the Stranza Mountains. The Feast of St. Constantine and St. Helen, which lasts for 3 days between May 21st and 23rd, is celebrated by all villagers, but only a few people perform the ritual. They are called the Nestinari. Traditionally, the title is hereditary, and the head Nestinar is succeeded by their child. Whoa. Only when they are too ill or old to continue the dancing on smoldering embers. I love that. Considering how far back this festival might go, that's intense. On the day of the feast, the villagers participate in a solemn procession to the Stolnina, a small chapel with icons of several saints, which is usually located in the head Nestar's house. In the chapel, the priest thurifies the icons, aka like fumigates them, and blesses the Nestinari. After that, the people head to a holy spring to bathe, and then they eat a symbolic offering of mutton, aka ram. That would be the the symbol of the beginning of spring. After sunset, the villagers dance around a large fire until it dies. Kind of sounds like Beltane. When only embers remain, the famous ritual begins. The Nestinari dance barefoot on smoldering embers to the beat of the drum, bringing the festive night to its climax. It is thought that at least some of the dancers fall into a kind of religious trance and don't feel pain caused by the embers. A similar ritual is performed in several villages in northern Greece, where it is known as the Anastaria. Before the First World War, these villages were part of Bulgaria, etc., etc. So, also on this day, wow, right? Like, isn't that freaking cool? That I love it. I love it. I was very excited when I found this. Okay. Also on this day, we have St. Helena's Day, St. Helen, from our UK slash Catholic friends and ancestors. Now, what is the big deal with her? She repeatedly discovered Christ's cross, which means that she is connected to holy wood. Now, that in and of itself is sort of an interesting thing when we have her connected to a fire walking festival, walking over coals of burning wood. But also, as we step into Gemini season and we begin the approach of summer solstice, we are going to see a lot more emphasis around St. John the Baptist. And for me, the relationship between St. John the Baptist and Christ is the same relationship as the Holly King and the Oak King. So here, remotely, we may have a connection to that symbolism through her finding this wood. Again, maybe I'm stretching stuff. I'll admit it. I'll take it. That's fine. Also on this day from our pagan friends and ancestors, but mostly our pagan, modern pagan Wheel of the Year calendars, we have the Day of the Bright and Dark Mothers. Again, this is a hearkening to that shifting thing that's happening in spring as we move out of winter and into summer. Again, also acknowledging the ice deities and the frost and death deities that are kind of afoot at this time of year, even as we are in the midst of all of this bright, lively, sexy energy that's happening around us as well. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Aganalia for Vediovis. Excuse me. This was an obscure, archaic religious observance celebrated in ancient Rome several times a year for various deities. That's the Aganalia. I love it because the Aganalias were so old that often Romans didn't know what they were doing or why they were doing it. They just knew they had to do it. And Vediovis is another name for Jupiter. So this is yet another holiday dedicated to Jupiter. There's like hundreds throughout the year because Jupiter. Okay. Last but not least, on this day, we have the day of Tefnut from our Egyptian friends and ancestors. This may or may not be authentically a day that was celebrated for this goddess back in the day. This might be a modern adaptation, so I'll just say that. But it's good and timely because Tefnut is a deity of moisture, moist air, dew, and rain in ancient Egyptian religion. Well, isn't that a wild coincidence? We were just talking about Rusalka and these other, the Green Week festivals for our Slavic friends and ancestors, where these deities and these energies or entities connected to rain, moisture, and wet areas were being worshipped. And then if we, roll back through the week, we've also got the Frigablat connected to clouds, certainly a source of rain and moisture and whatnot. So very cool connections there. Tefnut is the sister and consort of the air god Shu and the mother of Geb and Nut. The name Tefnut has no certain etymology, but it might be an automatopoeia of the sound of spitting, as Atum spits her out in some versions of the creation myth. Additionally, her name was written as a mouth spitting in later texts. Tefnut was connected with other leonine goddesses as the Eye of Ra. As a lioness, she could display a wrathful aspect and is said to have escaped to Nubia in a rage, jealous of her grandchildren's higher worship. Only after she received the title Honorable from Thoth did she return. Thoth, of course, is connected deeply to Hermes and Mercury. In the earliest pyramid texts, she is said to produce pure waters from her vagina, as many of us do. We love, right? Here is this goddess right in the midst of all of this around moisture, fertility, rain, all of that stuff. Powerful shit this week, man. Pretty cool and pretty spicy. Let's get into the wrap up, shall we? All right, heathens. Here is our weekly roundup. Our lunar phases are moving from Scorpio to Aquarius. So we are still rolling through those fixed signs, fixing us and holding it down here in the center of spring and the center of Beltane. For the Astro Roundup, Sunday the 15th kicks off with a spicy, super full, razzle dazzle, strawberry flavored. No, it's not strawberry. That's next time. Super full, razzle dazzle, bloody flower, extra bonus, full moon, your mom. 9:14 p.m., 25 degrees of Scorpio. Also on that same day, we have Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries at 14 degrees. We have the Sun in Taurus square Saturn in Aquarius at 24 degrees. We have the Sun in Taurus sextiling Neptune in Pisces at 24 degrees. On the 16th, the moon moves into Sagittarius. On the 17th, we have Mars in Pisces conjunct Neptune at 25 degrees. On the 18th, the moon moves into Capricorn. On the 19th, we have our disseminating moon in Capricorn at 2:41 a.m., 13 degrees of Capricorn. We also have the moon in Taurus trine Pluto retrograde in Capricorn at 28 degrees. We have Mercury retrograde in Gemini sextile Jupiter in Aries at 1 degree. On Friday the 20th, the moon moves into Aquarius and the sun moves into Gemini. And on Saturday the 21st, we have the sun in Gemini conjunct Mercury retrograde in Gemini at -0 degrees. And as you can see from our holidays, we are plunging headlong into that Gemini slash Mercury slash Hermes Hermetic energy and symbolism. The magic rituals and the enlightenment stuff just immediately kicks off. Stuff around commerce, stuff around seafaring adventures. It's kicking big time. And think about that Yoruba festival for Simbi Blanc, or the White Serpent, and think about the Caduceus wand that Hermes and Mercury carry. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this. If you're feeling especially heathenistic, you can give it a thumbs up or 5 stars, 5 being an extremely occult number. Thank you so much again and again and again to my patrons. If you want more support working with Beltane energy, or as we move into summer and summer solstice and Letha season, please join my Patreon. Folks at the $9 and higher, the Venus level, and up, get access to the Patreon bag of holding with workbooks and guides and digital spells and lots of extra stuff that does not make it out to the public. And if you're curious about how all of this stuff might be hitting for you, schedule a reading with me. You can do that through my website. Folks that are subbed at the highest levels with me on Patreon, $23 and up, get free readings throughout the year up to every month. So if you're wanting monthly guidance from me, that is something that we can work as well. All right, my heathens, take care of yourselves with this exceptionally spicy eclipse and this moon. Pray for peace. Pray for some cooling waters to pour over the spirit of humanity, because it is just getting a little too hot out there. So much love to you all. Blessed be.